It's late fall, wind blows from the northeast, and as the waves smash into your waders, fish crash through the surf feeding on disorientated bait fish. You look down to your fly box, but what fly do you tie on? And better yet, why choose that fly? Hey folks, Mike from LI Flies Mike, and today we're going to discuss how I approach choosing the right fly pattern when fly fishing for the Marone saxatilis, also known as the striped bass or rockfish. Fly fishing for striped bass is becoming more and more popular throughout the Northeast every year. From the surf to the back bays and creeks, fly rodders are taking advantage of the annual migration of these fish from the south to north and back again each year. From the springtime fishing looking for stripers in warmer waters, to late fall fishing with massive blitzes of fish feeding in the wash. Knowing what fly pattern to fish and how to utilize them effectively is extremely important in increasing your hookup ratio. Today we'll be going over my philosophy when it comes to choosing the right flies when fly fishing for striped bass, and how the feeding habits of stripers might dictate what flies you fish and why you may pick those particular patterns. This particular topic will be covered over multiple episodes. Originally, when I wrote the script, I planned on doing one video about choosing the right fly for striped bass, but after writing for half the day, I realized it'd be better to split the subject. The next episode will focus on how different times of the year, water quality, and overall conditions can affect your choice of choosing the right fly when fly fishing for striped bass. Now, this is a new type of format for me compared to my tying tutorials, so if you enjoy this video or you have any feedback for me, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Now let's get into the video. Choosing the right fly. So when it comes to fly fishing for stripers, I usually follow a couple of basic rules or fundamentals when breaking down how to choose what fly I'm going to fish. Ken Abrams, an amazing fly tyer and author, helped reinforce this idea with Striper Moon, his book on fly fishing for striped bass. I'll break it down in descending order on what I believe is the most important aspects first. Now, I highly recommend checking out Striper Moon. It definitely changed my outlook on fly fishing. And there's many other great authors that I'll recommend in future videos that we'll discuss in different topics. But for now, let's talk about the philosophy of choosing the right fly. So it's pretty simple. Presentation. So it's almost ironic that the most important thing to me when fly fishing for stripers isn't necessarily what fly you use, but it's how you use it. If you're not presenting the fly properly to match a bait in a natural way, you'll catch less fish. If you're not properly fishing the fly in the right area, then the fish won't eat it. There's really not much to it. You'd be surprised how fish can go from eating a tiny shrimp fly to a huge hollow fly, but if you present the fly in the right area of the water column and in a natural way, you're about 90% of the way there when it comes to striper fishing. Not to say fly choice isn't important, but I'd be lying to you by saying anything otherwise when it comes to presenting the fly to striped bass, and many other fish species as well. For instance, you may miss a lot of strikes if fish are feeding on the surface and you're fishing a heavily weighted fly. Or let's say you're stripping a fly against the current as opposed to the fly getting swept over a bar in a natural manner from, let's say, the wash or the current of a rip. If the fly isn't in the right area for the right reasons, then we're reducing our chances of a fish even seeing the fly, let alone it being interested in eating the fly. So the choice of what fly we'll be fishing always starts with where in the water column it will be and in what way we'll be fishing it. We're always trying to get a natural presentation to best increase our chances of strike ratios and catching more fish. So this can easily be a topic for a future episode of this series in itself. So if you'd like to see that, leave a comment down below and I'll gladly cover it. That being said, presentation isn't the only thing to think about, and your choice of fly does play a vital role in the presentation of displaying that fly naturally. So let's discuss what makes a fly the right choice when fly fishing for striped bass. Shape and overall profile. So first up is the fly's profile or general size, length, and width of the fly. Thanks to everybody who took part in this community poll here on YouTube. It looks like shape and profile won out in what is most important when choosing a fly over color. There's a couple of Clouser minnow lovers out there, and you love to see it, but let me explain to you why profile, I believe, is the next most important thing when choosing a fly. If I know stripers are feeding on small spearing as they get swept out of a creek in the springtime, for instance, I'll try and use a fly with the basic profile or shape and length of the bait that is being foraged on. Things like the overall shape of the fly, how wide or long the fly is in relation to the spearing, let's say, can make a huge difference. Striped bass at times can be very picky and will focus on a certain bait while feeding, almost like a trout during a hatch. Fishing a fly that is slightly too wide, or long or short for instance, can be the difference between hooking up or getting skunked. For instance, this peanut bunker here is well represented by this smaller EP fly, and these grass shrimp represented by the ultra shrimp pattern. Of course, there are exceptions like acres of fish blitzing on bait in the fall, but for your general fly fishing, you'll be working in a particular area thoroughly, or you'll be blind casting to try and find fish. Having a fly that overall matches the forage of striped bass will increase your chances greatly during these focus feeds, or just in general when searching or blind casting for fish. Color. Next is color. So now some may disagree with this logic, but generally the difference between using, let's say, a chartreuse over white versus pink over white surf candy probably won't be the end of the world. But if it was a very sunny day, I'd say any lighter or bright colored fly should work well, and the same goes for the opposite. If it's nighttime or it's very dark and cloudy out or rainy for instance, I tend to fish darker colored flies. The reason behind this is because of the way lighting works and the way fish will see the fly. A lot of times striped bass will see the fly from underneath more so than from the side. So it helps to have darker colored flies to be visible from underneath during the nighttime, and during the daytime, a lot of bait fish naturally become translucent when the way light reacts to them. So there's multiple reasons why, but generally the overall rule is when it's lighter out, we use light colored flies, and when it's darker out, we use dark colored flies. There's always exceptions to everything, but this is the general logic behind picking colors for striped bass. The finer details. Adding finer details to your flies, for instance, putting eyes on a fly. I personally don't think that the addition of eyes to a bait fish fly, for instance, will be the game changer between you catching a fish or not. What I do believe is if you're confident in a fly, you will fish that fly more effectively. The less time that we spend taking a fly box out and trying to pick through and rummage through and choose a fly, constantly changing flies and tying knots, the more time you fish a fly with confidence, the more fish you will catch on that fly. There's a reason why we have certain favorites and certain patterns that we tend to go to time after time. One of the reasons is that I'm sure the pattern is effective for the type of striper fishing you're doing, but the other reason is that you're confident in it. If you have confidence in the fly, you're going to fish the fly more effectively, and you're going to spend more time fishing and less time changing your fly out. So whether or not you add a dot to a bunker fly right behind the gill plate, I don't think will necessarily make the difference between you catching fish or not. But if you're more confident in that fly, then I say go for it. And you'd be surprised how ugly flies can outfish fancy flies when presented right. But if you're confident in your flies, then I think you'll see an increase in your hookup ratio. So just to reiterate one more time, the importance of choosing the right fly in descending order. I like to start with presentation, then profile length, then overall color, and then we go to the finer details. Again, there are so many variables to this subject, and we will be discussing this in future videos here. The next video will be discussing how water conditions, different times of year, different lighting conditions, boat traffic can all affect what type of flies you choose and how you fish them. And there will be many more videos when it comes to discussing different topics and how to choose the right fly, how to fish the right fly, what gear, what line, different fishing techniques. There's an endless supply of different things we could talk about when it comes to fly fishing for striped bass. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below on any topics you'd like to see covered. And again, this is my first time making this type of video, so I'd love to hear some feedback on it. And if you enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment down below. It really means a lot. In future videos, we'll be discussing broader topics with saltwater fly fishing, and particularly for striped bass. Well, my name is Mike here from LI Flies Mike. We have new fly tying videos coming out every week, as well as live fly fishing and fly tying, as well as early access for members. Till the next video, we'll see you. Tight lines.